See, I didn't get the epic car turn-up shot, so we'll go with this.
Yeah, this will do.
So Jordan, I just want to thank you for making the trip into the studio. Super excited to kind of pick your brain on your journey into building your agency. So for those watching this episode that maybe have never heard of you before, can you just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do?
I've been in business 5 years, and my business currently is a Shopify agency. So we specialize in design, development and CRO for e-commerce clients predominantly. So brands anywhere from sort of like 2 to 40 mil turnover online, and we just look after the tech aspect for these guys essentially.
We were chatting about this off camera, but like your journey into building your agency didn't start like that, right? Like you didn't start doing what you do right now. Give us a little backstory, like what was you doing?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. So we have pivoted quite a lot. So my career was in agency originally, which then transitioned into e-learning, selling courses. And that's where I got my original idea, essentially, to launch a mental health training company for schools. So at 19, made the jump far too early, looking back, because I didn't have a lot of like corporate skills in a way, like actually managing a business, finances. As such, I was essentially just somebody who knew how to pull an e-learning course together, get a creator, build a website and run marketing. So at 19, I jumped essentially and launched a company called School Mental Health Group. So we did exactly what I said. So just e-learning courses for schools around mental health, and just realized very quickly it is horrendously hard. So we work with around about 600 schools, and we was getting traction, but the cash flow was just horrendous to manage. So normally in the B2B world, the only time anything closes down is like Christmas. But with school, you have school holidays, so you have to manage your cash flow there. And starting, I literally had £900 in my bank account, like had no actual savings. And now I've got to fund the business and provide essentially enough capital and bring enough capital in to grow it and also live. Just taking a lease on my car, which is what we was talking about. Had a lot of direct debits going out because I was previously on a really good wage, and at 19 you don't really think about finances properly. So yeah, it was going okay for the first couple of months. We was doing well, but then when you're trying to actually grow it from a certain point, that requires capital, which I was having struggles getting in, because as soon as we're making sales, then it's, you know, school holidays and invoice payments and chasing all that stuff up. So what essentially I did was I started freelancing. So that's when I first met you. So I've always been creative. So I was building websites for local businesses, taking photos for the sites and shooting videos. And I was slowly building up my camera kit, and I looked on Facebook Marketplace because I was literally shooting with a DSLR camera, manual. Everything was coming out shaky. So jumped on Facebook Marketplace, found a gimbal for sale, which was actually you when you just came back from Ibiza. And that's how I became mates.
Epic, man. Yeah, I remember that. We had a little conversation, and I think off the back of that conversation, I basically told you to put your prices up or something to that effect. Yeah. So you've had quite the comeback story, and I kind of want to zoom in onto that, because I think I think for anyone watching this, if they're building a business, maybe in the early stages or even like a few years into it, I think some people maybe get caught up in this fallacy of like everything's just going to go from 0 to 100 really quick, and you're going to make loads of money really quick, and that's not always the case. So what were the hardest points? Like what were the rock bottom moments for you of you know, entrepreneurship? During
sort of like the first 2 years, I'd say there was never a moment where, whilst you're trying to run a business, in the business account, there's never a moment where there was over £2,000 in there. And, you know, so I think in the first year we probably turned over, it was like 24 grand. And sounds like a nice amount of money, but obviously that isn't profit. We had, particularly with the school mental health stuff, like business expenses, and I was just taking home absolutely nothing. So my credit score like took a huge hit. Had hardly any money to live for myself. I was racking up debt personally, and yeah, I was kind of in a position where I'm thinking about my life and thinking, well, I built up quite a lot of debt. I'm in a really bad position. If I was to quit now, I'm going to have to go back into a job on a steady away salary, but be paying off all this debt. So I don't know whether it was looking back now, it was the right decision, but it could have easily gone another way. I just really like plugged at it, and making the transition away from that really hard company to run and grow, the School Mental Health Group, into being a creator, essentially, building sites. Started very grassroots and, literally knocking on doors, proper hustle mentality, going into like industrial units in Scunthorpe. I'd sell a website to one dude for 550 quid and it'd be class, because I've been good at creative stuff, particularly shooting the content, and they always look bang on. Then it'll be next door. He doesn't have a website, because Scunthorpe's a really old, like, not backwards, but we're behind everybody else. So digitally there was nothing there. So, slowly, when I started focusing just on the local business sites and content, actually started getting a name for myself. So we progressed. Like, first year was 20 grand, second year was 60, third year was 80, and around about that point was when I decided to essentially make the switch. So I could see from working with these local companies and started taking on ones that were doing a little bit of e-commerce, the companies that were operating online with e-com, and that was their main source of revenue, they just spent like vastly more amounts of money on their website, because with a B2B company, they make updates periodically every year as things change. So once you've done that first site and got that first bit of cash in, it's great, but then the actual lifetime value of the customer is hardly anything. So there was a moment where I think I literally had 2 e-com companies, and I was getting a lot of leads through. Like, the company was growing. It was a lot of hassle. Definitely, again, didn't charge enough even back then, which is one of the things that you said to me. But from realizing this and only having these 2 companies, they were almost paying me as much as what the rest of the business was doing for me. So it was one night I was sat on the sofa and I changed my entire website, all the copy, everything, to just be focused around Shopify, because I have got a background in e-com. I've learned a lot about e-com, and I had enough knowledge then to actually start on this journey. And then since then, it's built into a sort of an international company. We have staff all over the world, layers of management. I'm no longer sort of involved in fulfillment as such, and really just focus on what I actually want to do, which is the strategy, which I've found my calling, essentially, which is actually running the business management and thinking what's coming next for the company, and sort of disassociated from the fulfillment aspect of the company, essentially. So yeah, we've come a long way.
Love that, man. Love that. So what have been some of the pinnacle moments, like the moments where you're like, I don't know, maybe it give you like this sense of pride or this sense of like, yeah, I've made it? Like, what are those moments that you can recall?
So in COVID, that was when it really started doing well. That was like the start of it all, particularly with perfect timing. COVID is a lot of bad things from it, but there was also, from a business aspect, if you was in the right industry, there was a lot of money to be made. And I think as soon as we was allowed to travel again, I actually went on my first holiday that like I've paid for myself, and that was probably a moment that I'll always remember. I went to Italy, Portofino, and it was just something like a little treat for myself. Like, managed to actually accumulate enough money to do something nice for myself for once. But that just really kicked off my traveling bug. Like, obviously you're big into traveling as well, and literally it was ever since that holiday, like I haven't stopped. Like, every single month I'll be in a different country. Trying to slow down a little bit more this year, because it does get absolutely knackering. Like, constantly being all over the place, and it's nice having a base, essentially. But yeah, that's really what's changed my life, essentially. And because it's not just obviously the financial side of stuff. What's important to me is having the freedom and being able to go on holiday, and that's actually what I really enjoy. It's less about materialistic stuff. So as soon as I got that like traveling bug, I just haven't stopped, and that's what's my life essentially about, is just getting more time back to be able to spend it on just enjoying myself.
Love that, man. No, you've got to enjoy yourself, right? Like, I feel like we swapped roles a little bit. Like, before COVID, I traveled a lot. Like, I was here, there, and everywhere. And then after COVID, I based back in England, kind of settled down a little bit. And I was like, I've just that bug's come back again. Like I'm in Canada next week, Bali after that. Whereas I've seen you just everywhere, here, there, and everywhere, man. What I'm curious to find is what motivates you. Like what inspires you? What drives you to keep pursuing and keep growing?
I think it's almost like purpose. So what originally got me going was just being sick of being in the position that I was in. But particularly when I was in that like dark period where I was racking up debt, like the only thing, and people say like a wage is addictive. Yeah, it is. It's also security. Like when it was really shit, it is very, very shit in business. Like you worry about everything. So originally my goal was essentially to just have like essentially 30 grand a year for myself, like have an actual wage that's every month gets paid into my business and not have to worry about that. But now it's more about pushing what I'm capable of. Like I don't want to, it's deep, but I don't want to die and think like, oh, I could have actually built the business bigger, because the money now, it's like just numbers on the screen. I've got everything I want in terms of like lifestyle. You can always have a cooler watch, faster car, bigger house and things like that, but it's just almost like I get the fulfillment of building something. That's definitely what drives me. My favorite part of it. It's like what gets you up in the morning, essentially.
Love that, man. Yeah, I think purpose and aligning with something bigger than just money is important. I don't know if you, like for me, there's been periods in my life where I've actually been, I want to say more unhappy, like even having like more money than I could spend. And like I can recall moments where I've like been just as depressed because there's been something like there's been a lack of fulfillment, there's been a lack of purpose. Like the work, it's like making money, but not happy. So it's like money doesn't, money does help solve problems. Yeah. It definitely does, but it's a tool.
Yeah.
And having a bigger drive, I think, is critical.
I think as well, like from what I've been through, there's been some like really cool moments that I always do think back in terms of highlights. So I think I've told you before, obviously, about the mushroom farm, and like
a little bit. Like let's go there. It's in the Philippines, or is it?
So it's in Bali.
In Bali, right? Got you.
So essentially, I was so my brother, like this would have been 6 years ago now. We went on the trip to Bali, and he was basically funding this school, and we for kids that live in poverty and want to learn English. And that was like his little charity piece that he was doing. So when we went to go visit, we climbed this mountain, Mount Rinjani on Lombok near Gili T. And when we've come back, I've not stayed in touch with these guys. This was years and years and years ago. And last November when I was on my trip to Bali, I've gone to check in the hotel, and the guy that's working behind the desk to do it has recognised my passport, recognised me, as one of the kids that basically climbed the mountain with us 5 years ago, who's now learned English and got a job in a really good hotel on Gili T. So got chatting to him, and he basically told me that during COVID, to survive as the hotels were shut down, he started growing mushrooms, not like psychedelic mushrooms, just oyster mushrooms were the actual type. And he had enough to, again, not grow it, but enough to survive, which was sick. But he said he always wanted to be a farmer. Like he wanted to grow it and actually have a business. So I basically just sat down, went for food with him, and I was like, mate, if you want to do it, I'll just fund it. So yeah, now I think it turns over something like £400 a month, but I think the average wage around there is 200. Okay. And like all his family get involved in it, and it's just a great source of income for them. The goal would be to get it to about £1,000 a month, which, would be a huge contribution to those guys. But that for me, like if the business did close down tomorrow, having something like that I can say that I've done is absolutely class in terms of happiness. And there's been other stories as well of like things and ways that I've helped staff, and now like having new people come in, it's seeing them go on their journey and being able to help those people as well. Like that's probably gives me a lot more than being able to go out for a nice meal. It's not all personal, it's being able to help others as well.
That's so cool. If I think back to maybe it's 6 years ago, it's quite a few years back now, and this is when I was building the gym. So the gym was like really strong point, probably make the peak of making most of my money. It's probably doing about 25 grand a month. And it was Christmas, and I was just, there's certain things that had gone on in my life. I'd come out of a relationship. I felt like I didn't really have a very strong friendship circle around me, and it was just Christmas, and I was just so low. And I actually went to do, my mum worked for a mental health charity, and she was like, why don't you come into work for me? And ended up going in and like seeing these kids who pretty much were living in this home. They didn't have family, they're spending Christmas there. and they were talking about, my mum was actually talking about this room they had, and they wanted to turn it into like a fitness room for the kids. Like, kids, they're like 16, 18, 20 years old, who all seemed pretty happy, to be honest. Like, I met them and they all seemed, like pretty happy, like nice enough to want to have a good conversation. So with that, I was like, looked at the room, and I basically got them all rallied up, cleared out the room. I went to my gym, looked for all bits of stuff that we didn't need, and basically built the gym, the setup there on the day.
So sick, yeah.
And that honestly just flipped the switch. I went from not really feeling that motivated, not really interested in opening presents or any of that bullshit, and then I did that, and I was just like, I was on a high, man. Like, I just felt so good. So yeah, like being able to contribute and help people, like it's powerful. So you didn't bring it up, but I want to talk about the comeback story.
Yeah,
because stuff we were talking about off camera was at one of the lowest points in building your business. You had your car repossessed.
Yeah.
How did that feel? Like, what was going through your head at that point?
It's kind of hard, like with debt and with everything that was going on. It's like I almost didn't feel emotion to it because everything was just piling on top of me, and I was just like burying it under the carpet. And so it was constant. It was like letters through from credit cards, car payments, loads of other shit. Business finances were fucked as well, and like everything was just on top of it. So instead of dealing with a problem, you just almost admit it or like convince yourself it doesn't exist. And that it's lucky, obviously, that I've managed to actually turn the business around to be able to like sort all this stuff out. But the actual result of it now, which I wouldn't change a thing because it's made me who I am, and like actually taught me so many different lessons, which I think that had to be learned in order to actually be a successful business owner, about like actually managing money correctly and having that financial, acumen essentially. To now looking to, sorted a lot of it out, and the only issues now are just your credit score, meaning that I can't buy a house and take out loans and things like that. But yeah, it's been a long way, and I do always think back, like it's very easy to forget that all this stuff happened, and that probably is something that gives me a lot of fulfillment, is remembering back at actually how shit that was, because it was so long ago, and life's been so good for literally the past 3 years. Like, as soon as the business started taking off, like I have almost had the same level of happiness like throughout the whole journey. And everything's just been a bonus as it's grown. But yeah, it is always really good to like actually think back and put myself in that position that I was in, and it really does ground you and level you out and give you empathy for other people as well.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think that I've been humbled many times in multiple businesses, to be honest. Like, but I wouldn't change that either. Like, I can think of some really big highs, and I can think of some really big lows, and the lows have revealed bigger parts of myself. Like, when you get pushed to the bottom or your back's against the wall, that's when you really realize your potential. Like, because you have no other choice, right? It's like you either give up now and you're fucked, or you build it back up. And I think when you got that mindset to just kind of keep getting back up, like I had it at the start of this year. I had my brother-in-law committed suicide, and like seeing the kind of devastation through the family, my two young nephews, and then I had a business partner leave kind of pretty much around the same time, and that was a moment where I was like, oh shit, right? Like, I just wanted to cry, if I'm honest. In the moment I didn't cry, but that's kind of what I wanted. Like, it was just like and I was just like, I'm not going backwards, man. Like, I'm not going backwards from this. And like the darkest of times always reveal like our true character.
It brings out the dog in you.
It does, man. It brings out the fighter, right? I think that's the realization. It's like, I am a fucking fighter. A big part of one of the businesses we're building right now, which is part of this podcast, is the High Paid Creator. And that is really about not just being a creator in the sense of building websites or videos or, businesses. It's realizing that you are a creator. You are the creator of your life. And I actually had that on a really deep crazy level. I'd taken some psychedelics. I think it was like 4-ACO DMT or something. It's like this synthetic.
Yeah.
And we were missioning around this forest, and I just felt like I was in the Matrix, man. I'm just missioning around. And whilst I was doing that, I had this, it's like my thoughts were just erupting, but my thoughts were compartmentalizing. Like I could visualize folders being pulled out in my brain and stuff getting organized.
So sick.
And then with that was like this voice, and it wasn't even like a voice. It was like deeper than that. It was just like this, like, holy shit, I am a creator. And then my brain went to like, and my body went to like, wow, like that's so much responsibility, but like in an empowering way. I was like fuck, I'm the creator of my life.
Yeah.
Which sounds a bit crazy, especially like talking about psychedelics and coming through, but it was like this deep realization of like, I am the creator of my life, just as you're the creator of your life, just as everyone is the creator of their life.
No one's going to do it for you.
No one's going to do it for you. So how did it feel to buy the Porsche cash? Like going from that moment of having a car repossessed, rock bottom, to building your business up to a point where you're like, right, I'm just going to buy this car because I want it. Yeah. I'm going to buy it in cash. How did that feel?
Sick, to be fair. I don't know. It's like,
did you appreciate it at the time? Was it like a fuck yeah, or was it more of a?
Oh yeah, I was like for months I was thinking like, what song are we going to play when I'm going to get it? It's just like such a sick feeling. But yeah, it gives me a lot of like pride in a way. It's like, it's almost like a token, because my business, everything is online, and like I hardly even see my in-person staff. Like it's literally me, my laptop in my office at home, and like having certain things that are like mementos. Like I'm not really into watches, so it's like, instead of a watch, it's get something like that, something I can see, and you know, it's almost just like a milestone achievement for me. But it's, in terms of like creating your own life, like that's something that I've really sort of like pursued, or like particularly with where I'm living and understanding the things that actually make me happy. So for me, like any financial decision I've ever made, I've wanted it to not affect me and my actual life, and almost wrote down the things that do make me happy. And that, one of those huge things for me was traveling and having the ability to eat what you want, where you want, not skip out on plans because you can't afford it. And the very, very easy way to get into that is, you know, car payments, housing, and things that you necessarily couldn't afford. So it's almost every time I do make a financial decision, it's something that's not going to affect my core principles that are travel and doing things essentially, and having like life experiences. Even down to like where I live, like it's perfect for me. I've realized that I don't actually want to live in a city. I like having nature, similar to
right
you
now,
obviously know that. And I think that's probably just because we're northern, like it's just what we're used to. But it's doing things not for, because people do ask me like, why do you live in a random village in the middle of North England, particularly with all my friends like living in London, Dubai, and around the world. There's so many other places that you can do, but actually what makes me happy is waking up in the morning, walking down the stairs, walking down the high street, going to Costa Coffee, and like that's enough for me, and that gets me in a great mood in the morning, and going for walks when it's sunny in nature and things like that. Being
on the very rare occasion that it's sunny in England.
Yeah, absolutely. And just being like close to my family and friends and things like that, that's actually what makes me happy. So everything around my life has been built with that thing, and that's why I can, you know, I'm always in a good mood, and people always say I'm happy and smiley, and it's because I've not done anything of what anybody else's expectation of like happiness is, or their expectation of success. Like I'm just doing the things that really actually I enjoy, essentially. And you know, you get the cool cars and stuff like that, but that's not actually the thing that makes me whole in a way.
It's like the perk, right? It's like the little icing on the cake. I remember, again, we're going a few years back now, I bought an Audi RS3, brand new custom spec. I actually just went into the shop to look at it, test drive it, with more of like, because at the point I actually wanted an R8, but like I wasn't rich enough to buy like the R8. I wasn't at that level yet. So I was like, RS3, took it out, and I was like, this is sick. So I literally put a deposit straight away and like ordered one, and they were like, oh, it's going to be here in like 6 months. And I was like, oh, a bit of motivation. They rang me up. It's like 3 months later. It's like, oh, your car's ready. and they wanted like 10k deposits. I was like, fuck. So I just kind of pulled some stuff together, went and got it, and I loved that car. Like probably with the same. I mean, we took a drive out on your car earlier. The crack, the popple, the crack, the popple, the crackle, the pop. It's fun, and I bet every time you get out your car, you kind of give a little glance back a couple times just to admire it. Yeah. But the novelty did wear off for me. I think maybe about 18 months in. Yeah. When it was more that, I think because I'd become caught up in maybe creating an image, maybe like trying to prove. No, I don't think I consciously was like, I'm going to buy this car to prove to people that I make money. I think it was more like I loved it and I thought it was sick, and maybe to prove to myself that I actually had achieved something. But then I ended up traveling to Bali and getting more immersed into different, I guess, different healings, like different, like very spiritual practices. And that kind of like started to dissolve the ego a little bit. It started to, and it was like, why have I got this car? Like, why am I paying? I mean, I didn't buy it cash. I got it financed. The finance at the time was like $850 a month. And then by the time I was paying insurance, tax, I don't even want to know what I spent on fuel, but like it was a lot of money a month. And I just started to think like, fuck, like I could be helping my family with that money, or I could be doing other stuff. So I think when you buy stuff for the right reasons, I think, it's like, do what you enjoy. But I think it is easy to get caught up in this idea of, or I want that car for the image on Instagram, or I want it to prove to people. And I don't think that's a good spot to be in. But I can see you're happy. I mean, that car's sick, dude. I love taking a little lap in that today. Yeah. It's a shame because it's raining in England. We didn't get to get the drone up.
I do actually think, like, now thinking back, like, you're talking about Bali and everything. I actually did have an ego death, I think. It's kind of weird. I was on Gilly T, and this was before I did the actual trip over. So I think this maybe could have been one of the influences.
Did you do the mushroom shakes in Gilly?
Yeah. I think I've had about 6, right? Me and my friend were just out, like, partying, and, we're just enjoying, like, the effects of... like the hallucinations and stuff. And then I've gone back to the hotel room and I've listened to Joe Rogan podcast of all things. But I was like, I'm going to listen to some stuff about like DMT and all sorts. And like, as he was speaking, it was because I've only ever done it once. I wanted to try it. But as he was speaking and just talking about like loads of mad stuff, I actually think it affected my brain chemistry. Like the next day, I felt so much more empathetic to other people. And then that was when we took the trip over to the mushroom farm and stuff, and spent like a few days with his family, and like,
here's the money.
Literally like sleeping on the floor, which is crazy. And it definitely removes your like thoughts around material items. That's definitely.
Yeah, man, it does. I've been quite a psycho astronaut, I think is what they call it. I did like a year of just pretty much doing every psychedelic, from DMT to like smoking DMT to synthetic DMT to ayahuasca to magic.
The toad?
No. Ayahuasca's still it's still like DMT, but you drink it. You're meant to go into like the jungle and you go with like shaman, and I had like a referral from a friend who this guy was classed as a shaman, but he was like a regular guy, but like very, very knowledgeable, had like a very grounded energy to him. And I paid him to come to my house, and we did this 2-day ceremony, and literally like blessed the house, was lighting stuff, like proper set the mood. We did it in moonlight. I had to follow this like specific diet building up to it, and you basically drink it. And unlike like DMT, where you smoke DMT, and that's very short, like you kind of go into a different world, but it's like you lose concept of time, but it's probably like 15 minutes, like it's not long. Whereas ayahuasca lasts for hours. And the first night I drank it, and I don't really remember the first night. Like I remember like the first night being like relaxed and kind of like, I don't know, probably just detached, like my own cocoon, just like huddled up. But the second night I had it, and then I had this like desire to like have more, and I said to him, I was like, I feel like I can have some more. So I drank some more, literally instantly felt sick, was like holding it back. And 5 minutes later, couldn't hold it back anymore. Ended up, they call it purging, because what they do actually say, like, you are meant to be sick when you have it, because it's like getting rid of like the toxins and stuff in your body. And I was like flying through space, man. I was literally cuddled up in a ball on my sofa at home, but like I was mentally flying through space. And I say mentally, it's like I could feel it physically. You know, like imagine like doing a skydive or like putting your head out the car at like 200 miles an hour, and you feel that. Like I could feel it through my like whole body, and I just got this like. The message I got from it was realizing how powerful my body was, because at that point I'd put on a lot of weight. I was struggling with anxiety. I wasn't living aligned with my values. I wasn't looking after my health, and it just like reconnects me. Like I've got to look after this vessel. But yeah, like psychedelics, they do. I don't know the technical, but it's they rewire your brain.
Yeah. Well, that podcast that I listened to, it's re-jogging my memory now, but the guy that was on it, he was saying that he thinks that all world leaders should have ayahuasca